The broadcast of the special meeting of the Charter Commission will now begin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this live broadcast of our virtual meeting. This meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota statutes section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. My name is Barry Clegg and I'm the chair of the Charter Commission. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so that we may verify a quorum.
Commissioner Abbott.
Here.
Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Ginder.
Here.
Commissioner Kozak.
Here.
Commissioner Lickness. Commissioner Metke.
Here.
Commissioner Newborn. Commissioner Perry.
Here.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Here.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Present.
Commissioner Schwarzkopf.
Present.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Lickness. Commissioner Newborn. Chair Clegg.
Here.
There are 11 members present.
We have a quorum. We'll now proceed to the agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. The agenda is before us. May I have a motion to adopt, please?
So moved, Sandberg.
Is there a
Second, Rubenstein.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion before the clerk calls the roll? Hearing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Commissioner Abbott.
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen.
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Ginder.
Aye.
Commissioner Kozak.
Aye.
Commissioner Lickness. Commissioner Metke.
Aye.
Commissioner Newborn. Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Aye.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Schwarzkopf.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Lickness. Commissioner Newborn. Chair Clegg.
Aye.
There are 11 ayes.
The motion carries and the agenda is adopted. The next item is the chair's report, and I have nothing to report that's not already on our agenda, so we'll proceed to the only substantive item of discussion on the agenda, which is considering next steps with respect to the City Council's proposed charter amendment related to community safety and violence prevention. As we did before our vote to request our additional time, I would like to refer this to a work group, which I am proposing that we slightly reconstitute, and I'm proposing that the members of the work group be as follows. Co-chairs, Commissioners Newborn and Rubenstein. Members, Commissioner Kozak, Commissioner Perry, Commissioner Sandberg, Commissioner Schwarzkopf, and me as ex officio. And this would be along the lines that we had established for the previous work group. Everyone is welcome to join the meeting, and everyone is welcome to speak at the meeting. These would be the work group members. Can I have a motion to adopt that proposal?
So moved, Sandberg.
Second,
Been moved.
Metke.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Abbott.
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen.
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Ginder.
Aye.
Commissioner Kozak.
Aye.
Commissioner Lickness. Commissioner Metke.
Aye.
Commissioner Newborn. Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Aye.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Schwarzkopf,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia, Commissioner Lickness, Commissioner Newborn, Chair Clegg.
Aye.
There are 11 ayes.
That motion carries. I would ask that the chairs, the two co-chairs of the work group, Commissioners Newborn and Rubenstein, please call a meeting of the work group sometime within the next week. And I know the regular meetings of the work group were Tuesday afternoons, which seem to work for most people, but I leave that up to the co-chairs to call that meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner
Yes.
Rubenstein.
Hi. We have discussed it already, and it seemed a good idea to keep to the same schedule since people were familiar with it. And so we shall propose having our first meeting this coming Tuesday.
At 4 p.m.
Yes.
Does the clerk note that, and will the clerk please post that and notice the meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The next item I wanted to cover is just going around the room, if you will, the virtual room, and talk about information that we want the work group to have and to look at during the next roughly 110 days. That's the time that's left over from our additional 60 days plus the 90 days additional time that we requested. And I'll start us off just to set the table, and then we'll ask other people to add things that they want. And the work group can take or leave this, but I think it should be a good summary of things that we want to consider over the next period of time. I would just start with, if it's available, we want to see the 911 study. If it's available and completed, we want to see the staffing and efficiency study. I would like to see a legal review, a full legal review of the proposed amendment. And by that, I mean, I know we already have a review of the labor law issues, but I'd also like to see a review to determine whether or not the proposed amendment is consistent with everything else in the charter, if there are any inconsistencies that need to be addressed, and whether or not the proposed amendment is consistent or in conflict with state law. I'd also like to see a review of other jurisdictions, including Minnesota, but also including other similarly situated, similar sized jurisdictions in other parts of the country to learn best practices. And I'd like to see the Minnesota Department of Human Rights investigation results when that is available. I'd like to go around and hear from others who might have things to add to that laundry list. Please enter your name in the chat if you'd like to be recognized.
Cohen, I'd like to be recognized.
Commissioner Cohen.
Am I recognized?
Yes, you are.
I'd like to have the work group consider a residential requirement for members of the Minneapolis Police Department.
All right, that's noted. Commissioner Abbott.
Yes, I think as I look at the council amendment proposal, there are essentially three elements to it. There's the first element is removing the barriers to restructuring the police, which is remove the minimum staffing requirement, remove the police as a charter department, and giving the council clear authority to legislate on police matters. The second element is the transfer of all the powers related to the police from the mayor in their entirety to the council. And I think the third element is establishing the new department and the regulations for the new department in the charter itself. And I think, and if you remember from last week, I'm, clearly the second and third elements I have some issues with, and I'm wondering if the work group could somehow, I don't know if we're going to need to have another public hearing or not, but it seems to me it would be worth having a public hearing just on the council versus the mayor issue. What element of the council proposal is does the council think it's necessary to transfer all of the mayor's powers in their entirety to the council, and if so, why? And I think we've had a lot of public hearings, we've had a lot of input on the whole defund the police concept, but I don't think we've had any really discussion or analysis of kind of the details of this particular proposal. And as we get to the, I don't know if we're going to be introducing a substitute or discussing a substitute, but it seems to me that we could pare this down into just element number 1 in terms of removing the barriers, and that might be a lot cleaner for us to discuss or kick around. And I'd like to at least get a process started where we could talk about possible amendments, and I think we need to have some testimony on the other, what of these 3 elements, which ones are absolutely necessary or not. And I think we should also, by the way, invite the authors of this amendment, the 5 council members, back to talk about, which of these 3 elements is more important than the others, or if in fact they really are some sort of unitary proposal that they don't think that can be separated. So I don't know if that counts as a item for the work group, but I think that's something we need to discuss.
Thank you, Commissioner. And that brings to mind, I would add to the laundry list of items to be examined the opinion of the city attorney with respect to the 2018 amendment, where I believe the city attorney's office opined that the city council has exactly the same authority over the police department as it has over all other departments in the city. And I think that would be an important piece to consider. Commissioner Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned the 3 elements that I would have. I'll add one that I brought up at the meeting last week, and that is the what our partners in other jurisdictions would think about not having a police department to interact with. So that would be the one thing in addition to the 3 that you mentioned that I would add.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginder. Are you silent again?
How is that?
We gotcha. Go ahead.
Just as a quick aside, with regard to the residency requirement, I do know that that's state law that prohibits municipalities from.
I know that.
Yeah, but the charter can't overrule it. So, we can certainly take a look at it again, but I don't know that there's a lot of traction there. My main comment.
It can be a subject of negotiation between the police union and the people that will be establishing reform proposals for the city police department. It's a topic that can be discussed amongst parties involved.
Thank you, Commissioner Cohen. Let Commissioner Ginder go for his turn, please. Thank you.
As we go through this process, I think we should also, since we have this time, think about if we're going to come up with our own responsive proposed amendment. And I think since we have close to 4 months, it's useful to think about, is there a value in putting together a larger public safety group underneath the control of the mayor, in taking this idea that has been broached in the past about having a stronger mayor system, and taking a look at it, at least from a public safety viewpoint. Is there something to be gained by looking at a fire department, police department, 911, emergency communications that are all directly responsible to the mayor, or is that something that a road that we're not interested in going down at this time?
Thank you. Commissioner Sandberg.
All right. Thank you. I think this might be included in what Chair Clegg had mentioned, but just to make sure, I'm just curious to take a look at charters within the state of Minnesota and perhaps other states as to whether, in fact, anybody includes a mandatory minimum for police funding, which ours has, and also to look at whether, in fact, most charters include departments, including the police department, in their charters, or is our charter significantly different from others. It would be more background information. Certainly we can be different. Maybe that's a good thing, but it's something I think it would be interesting to learn a bit more about. But as far as just what we're doing with the amendment, those are just my 2 suggestions.
Thank you. Commissioner Rubenstein.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. Thinking about our first work group meeting next week, I had put together quite a list, many of things already discussed, but I had a few additions. One is examples of reform efforts that have been implemented to date and how they're working out and could still be implemented, and are they being worked on? Also, I would like to see the City Council's plan for community engagement, which was supposed to have been completed before now. And I'm wondering whether they're still going to complete one, and if so, whether we can look at it. You mentioned, Chair Clegg, the Department of Human Rights investigation, but there's also a settlement agreement now, and I'd like to see that and learn more about that. Commissioner Perry mentioned looking at other partnerships and the impact of whatever we do with the police department here, how it will have an impact on them. And I guess I would like us to consider talking to other stakeholders as well that we haven't had a chance to hear from. Finally, I'd like to know if there are any budget studies to date on the new department that was proposed, and whether there is any work in that area by the City Council. And finally, well, I think, and most importantly, we've discussed from time to time the fact that we're all not very clear with each other as to what our jurisdiction is and what we can propose or what we can be doing in the next 3 months. And so I would like to see a discussion on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kozak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think some of what I was going to say was covered by very well by Commissioner Abbott. We need an inventory, I think, of what in the charter, other than the minimum personnel requirement, what in the charter either implies or mandates a presence of a police department, and to make sure that we're seeing in the charter all the things that do apply to the operation of the Minneapolis Police Department, and also are there obstacles to reform in the current charter? And then I would hope that we would consider or think about, is there anything in the charter that we could add that would help in the effort to change the culture and reform? In addition to that, and I haven't thought this all the way through, but one thing that is going on that we saw in the budget discussions that the council just completed for their supplementary budget, and I assume we'll see more of that as they get into the next year, to the big budget. What I see is there are all kinds of functions that come under the rubric of public safety. Some are the traditional police functions, but some we're getting more and more into, I guess what you would call the community outreach, or some call it the social work functions. And right now what I see, they're pulling things out of the police department, and some of this is done by the police administration, some by the council as they exercise their budget prerogatives. They're taking a lot of the community outreach, community policing parts of the current police department, and they're moving them into the Department of Health, into that division, the new division. And I guess I don't want to put an undue burden on any of the staff, such as we have or the county attorney, but in other jurisdictions, how are these things handled? Because what I fear, and I don't know that it's within our purview to be worried about this, but what I see happening is a police department that's little by little being stripped of its community outreach operations, and we're going to end up with a warrior department, which everybody claims we don't want. And with split chains of command. So I'd like to see how other cities, if we do have the resources to find out, how other cities handle all these different functions. Are they within the police department, or are they, as we're headed now in Minneapolis, do they bifurcate the community outreach parts from the department itself? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kozak. Commissioner Mecci.
Hello. Yeah, a lot of the items that I had on my list have already been listed. I was going to speak to what Commissioner Cohen just spoke about as well. You know, community policing, community outreach aspects are what lead to diversifying any public safety officers. And so seems to me that that needs to be tied in somehow. One of the things that could be an outcome of the public safety work group that could be helpful, some sort of charting, like a clear charting that could be in a JPEG and posted around about who does what. What I heard through the public hearings is a lot of conversation about things that the state had control of that we didn't have control of, or things that the city doesn't have control of but does. So if we could, through the work group, kind of map out some of those points that were raised and delineate that on a clear chart, I think that would be very helpful as a public information tool. And the last thing I wanted to say is with regards to Commissioner Rubenstein about a plan. Last Thursday at the POGO committee, Councilmember Cunningham led people through a presentation of what the community safety and outreach plan would be, and that is available in a PDF, and maybe Casey could send it out to everyone.
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Sandberg has a clarification.
Why didn't you call in Commissioner Schwarzkopf? Because I don't think he's spoken yet.
Commissioner Schwarzkopf. We can't hear you, Commissioner Schwarzkopf.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much. I was looking at some of the material that we received, and I really am concerned about the Office of Violent Protection, which is in the Health Department, and then the Police Department, and are the two coordinating with one another? Are they carrying out their, are they talking to what they're doing and that type of thing? So I think we really need to take a look at, is there coordination between the Health Department and the Police Department? Because so much is going into the Health Department right now. The other thing I was going to mention is that, and this is off the subject, is that the union contract is now open. It's being negotiated. And now the time for the city council to make sure that in negotiations of the union contract, if there are police officers that need to be fired or reprimanded, that we can take out whatever the problems are that are caused by the union contract, and we can get those out of the contract now. The city may have to give some things to do that, but I think now is the time to do that. That was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwarzkopf. And I'll add something to the list. I know the city attorney's office is already working on sort of an analysis of what duties do we need a licensed officer, a licensed police officer to perform. There are certain things that only a licensed police officer can do. I believe Bert Osborne of the city attorney's office is working on an analysis. For example, only a licensed police officer can carry a gun and make arrests and serve warrants, etc. So I think that list would be helpful because it would show us, conversely, what specific duties we would not need a licensed police officer to perform. So hopefully we can add that to our list as well. And let's see, Commissioner Sandberg, I'll go back to you. You had a follow-up.
Yes, I'll try and make it brief. Commissioner Rubenstein mentioned a jurisdiction, determining jurisdiction, which I think would impact when we ask for more time, or even just doing it in our first set of days. Would that also then include, or I would like to see us discuss, how we determine if a proposed amendment is fully baked, a technical term. And I think that several people at the last meeting had some very good thoughts about items that we should consider when we're reviewing an amendment. That's it.
Thank you. And Commissioner Abbott, a follow-up.
Yeah, briefly. As we look at other cities and compare what this proposal or what our current situation is to other cities, I'm not aware of any city that runs its police department exclusively through the city council. And I think we should, as long as we're doing comparative research, I think we should throw that question in to the list of things to look at in terms of what other cities are doing. The only real analogy I can think of is Portland, which has a commission form of government. And so it has, like, the mayor apparently traditionally becomes the police commissioner in this 5-member commission that runs the city. But I don't think that's analogous to what the council has proposed here. But I think we should be on the lookout for any analogies like that. So just something to add to the list on comparative research.
Commissioner Abbott, I would just note that we did a fair amount of research along those lines with respect to the 2018 amendment. Specifically, Commissioner Ginder did quite a bit of work, so we can pull that out and put it to good use again. Next is Commissioner Mecci has another comment.
Just another thought that I had for the work group. At some point, and I don't know when it is on the timeline, but at some point, I think you should bring the chief back in to talk about areas of reform that he's working on, because since I work in a neighborhood, I know that they are actively working on reform and putting a proposal together about what that means, and they're continuing to just quietly keep doing their work. And at some point, I think he should be brought in because he is in charge of the police department.
Thank you, Commissioner Mecci. Let's see. Commissioner Ginder.
Thank you. Just very briefly, the question about if other cities in their charter have minimum requirements for a police department. I've done minimal research on that, but San Francisco in its charter has a specified number for minimum officers. Seattle also has a requirement that they maintain a minimum police department. So just offhand, those are 2 cities that I'm aware of. And then the second item on the process that the Charter Commission follows when it reviews an amendment, we have to remember that our roles differ depending on how the charter amendment comes to us. So there's a big difference between the role we play when it comes in as a voter petition, which is basically a rubber stamp, and the role we play when it's our own amendment, and the role we play when it comes from the city council. So we have to keep in mind that each of those is different.
Thank you, Commissioner. I note that Commissioner Newborn has joined us. Did you have anything to add, Commissioner Newborn, or you're just noting that you've joined us?
No, just noting that I've joined. Thank you so much, Chair Clegg.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you. Apologies for joining late. I hope I have a few things to offer, and I hope I'm not covering things that have already been said. First of all, regarding the Department of Human Rights investigation, on the Human Rights website, they have a page for the investigation. And one of the FAQs on that page is about how long the investigation will take. And the answer is that it depends on the community engagement process and how cooperative the parties are. And my question is, what community engagement process are they using? Is it something that is perhaps dovetailing with the city council's process and what was discussed at last week's POGO meeting. My second item is with regard to the budget, and that analysis is looking at the co-responder study and what Mayor Fry put forth in the budget for 2019 and what happened to that. He put forth some funding to expand that pilot. What happened to that proposal? What happened to expanding the pilot? And then just because if you take a look at the study, they had pretty good outcomes and good answers to how to pair up different kinds of professionals with police officers in order to respond to certain situations. Thirdly, this could dovetail on Commissioner Schwarzkopf's comment about the contract with the Federation being up. Perhaps doing an organizational design or organizational cultural audits of both the police department and the Federation, again, to try to get to the nut of where is the dysfunction perhaps coming from. Fourth, really trying to, with regard to what the city council is doing with POGO, I didn't catch the whole meeting last week, but what principles and best practices are they doing with regard to a community-driven bottom-up engagement? Are they having a type of steering committee made up of community members? And perhaps somebody to have this driven by the public as well as either city staff or the city council. And does that process include young people? Because at this critical junction, the future entrustment of the police department lies in the young people. Fifth, what is the council's current purview over setting police department policy? There was a lot of criticism and frustration that they couldn't set policy. And there's a difference between to whom the police department reports and the standards and holding the police department to standards versus policy. And then lastly, I would like to be able to see some collaboration with the city council, especially if what comes out of our efforts now. We have seen some rather belligerent behavior, and I would really like to see us turn a new leaf and look forward and look collaboratively and put our joint problem solving efforts to good use going forward. Anything less is a continued disrespect and disservice to the residents of Minneapolis. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Just a reminder to commissioners that if you're speaking and you're joining via Microsoft Teams, please turn on your camera. Next is Commissioner Kozak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have hopefully briefly two things. Commissioner Cohen talked about residency, and there's another piece in state law that I think prevents the city from doing what it would probably like to do, and that is it does control arbitration, the state law. I know that the union contract, the city has, and the union has some latitude about how to deal with the arbitration, but I also think that the state law in the Public Employee Relations Act, Labor Relations Act, has other provisions. And it might be worthwhile, maybe as we go along, and ideas for reform start taking shape, what is there in state law that's going to need that will need to be changed if these things are going to be put into effect? So that's something that could be probably done after a time. The other thing, though, central to our discussion in the last 2 months has been the size of the police department. The 0.0017. I think we should find out, and I think there's probably it can be done. And I looked up some things myself. What is our ratio of citizens to police, or police to citizens? We can figure that out. We're going to have about 430,000 people in the city. We have 800 and some cops. But are we above or below the national average for the size of the police department relative to the size of the population? And I think that is, the debate so far is how far down should we reduce the department? Well, people forget that just a year ago, or a year and some months ago, the chief came in and asked for a couple hundred more police. So that's what we need. And this was before all the troubles we're going through right now. So I think it would be very helpful to know where we stand vis-a-vis other cities of our size, other cities of our demography. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kozak. There's one more speaker currently in the queue. I'll recognize Commissioner Schwarzkopf, but then after that, let's just keep in mind that this is the beginnings of a list and the beginnings of the things we want to talk about. I'm sure this is not the end of that discussion, and it will come up again at the work group meeting next week, and probably keep coming up at work group meetings after that. So if you think of something, feel free to send it on to the co-chairs of the work group, Commissioner Newborn and Commissioner Rubenstein. And if we don't bring it up today, that doesn't mean we're not going to consider it. Commissioner Schwarzkopf.
2 points, Mr. Chair. The first point is that the City of Minneapolis has a Police Conduct Oversight Commission. I don't know what they're doing or how they're working with either the council or the chief of police, but I think we need to find out what they're doing because some of the things they're supposed to be doing anyway, taking a look at policies and stuff like that within the police department. The second point is that it sounds like we're going to need to take a look at what is the structure of Minneapolis again. Should it be a manager, council, form of government? Should it be a mayor, council, form of government with a strong mayor, weak council? Should it be what we presently have? Should it be a commission form of government? So sometimes it sounds like we're going to have to look at that issue again. Thank you.
Okay, I see no other commissioners in queue, and I have no other business. So we will adjourn our meeting today, and the next meeting of the work group will be next Tuesday at 4 p.m. So we've concluded all business to come before the Charter Commission today. So without objection, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.